Welcome again to another Technology Review Council session. My name is Novo Manna, and we have today Tabulera, Amy Bischoff, and Doug Devlin. So, Amy, please take us through the PowerPoint.
All right, thanks, Nova. I appreciate it. So as we dive into employee benefits, whether you're coming from a broker's perspective, benefits team, or on the finance side, I think we can all agree that the benefits administration is overly complicated. So Doug and I are excited to go through our capabilities and show you how we are able to not only automate and streamline this process, but we're certainly here to solve that problem and make things easier for the teams involved. So as I dive through, give a quick introduction here. So Tabulera is a platform that's modularized, and we will centralize all of the administration processes into one tool. So we automate accounting, invoicing, reconciliation, payments, and data aggregation, again, with the purpose to lighten the burden of the HR and finance teams. So with our modules, we're really focusing on changing status quo when it comes to manual processes, inaccuracies, disparate systems, and lack of timeliness. You can see with the graphic on the screen here, we're a modular system, so we can plug and play with any enrollment and payroll system. We become an extension to the current systems in order to automate and complete processes that have not been supported by technology in the past. As I go through the modules in each of the presentations, it's important to realize the modules can be purchased individually, or they can be packaged. Everything is built and implemented based on your specific needs. So first I want to start with consolidated invoicing. Tabulera will create all of your self-bills. We're also going to capture the carrier bills through our automation, and we're going to pull everything into our system to create one consolidated invoice with all insurance carriers and vendors, and present that to the client on a monthly basis with a PDF and an Excel version. Oftentimes in the market, we've seen TPAs, and they're only able to consolidate invoices that are managed through the enrollment system. But Tabulera has a lot of flexibilities, and we are able to include anything. So you may have an ERISA attorney or an accounting firm that performed an audit that needs to be paid. And so we have no limitations as to what we can include. We'll consolidate that, and we'll add that to the invoice each month. The next is our payment modules. Naturally, I think it's paired very well with our consolidated invoicing. So we can present to you on a monthly basis. Tabulera is also registered as a TPA, so we're able to take those funds. We're going to remit the payments back to the individual carriers and vendors, along with all of the required documentation for that payment for each of the carriers. One big differentiator with Tabulera is we can also pay for claims on a self-funded plan if that's a need. So not only are we going to look at your admin fees, your stop-loss fees, we can also include those weekly claim payments as well. The next module is our EDI Connections. So as I've mentioned above, we can implement the modules individually. And so EDI Connections are not a requirement for us to administer other modules, and the other modules are not a requirement for us to implement the EDI Connections. So our philosophy with this is if it's already in place with your enrollment or your HRIS system, it's in place, it's working, there's no need for us to displace them. However, we can certainly take over if needed. Oftentimes we've seen with HRIS vendors, they charge for additional connections, and those can be very expensive. And then we've also seen that some of the voluntary benefits, some of those connections aren't even supported. So we have a ton of flexibility, and we have a lot of capabilities, and these are great situations where we can step in and we're able to set up those connections with those carriers. Our next module is plan accounting. So most benefit teams, they're either not involved in this process or they simply don't know how to account for all of the benefit transactions. So not only can Tabulera create journal entries, but we're also able to map every transaction to your general ledger for your financial statements each month as we're administering your payments. So this alleviates a lot of the work when it comes time for either an audit, your annual reconciliation for your financial statements, and we've really seen that this is supporting the accounting team, where historically, it just ends with making these payments. So we've taken it a step further to also take that burden off of finance teams. Reconciliation. We've looked at this, and we certainly think that this module sets us apart. We integrate many data sources in order to make sure we're finding these variances. So we are going to look at enrollment data, payroll data, as well as carrier invoices to not only make sure that the enrollments are correct, but that the money that is being charged at the employee level as well as the employer level is correct. A lot of TPAs will not reconcile against payroll, but we look at this as a large opportunity for us to catch any incorrect rates, any discrepancies with payroll deductions, and we're able to do this on a timely manner to make sure that we catch it soon and it does not turn into a larger problem with retro corrections, with either payroll corrections or carrier corrections. Not only are we going to reconcile everything down to the penny on a monthly basis, Tabulera creates and maintains an employee-level register showing all of the enrollments and the payroll deductions for the life of the contract that you're with Tabulera. What this does is it allows a historical view of all of the events tied to the employee in the event that there's an audit or a discrepancy. So at this point, I've gone through some of the high-level details of the modules. Want to turn the time over to Doug. He's going to go through a system demo of our platform.
Great, thanks, Amy. And No, thanks for the introduction. Just to let you know that Nov and I actually worked together in a prior life. So Nov, my condolences to you. But
I was going to say, you don't hold that against me. That's good. There were two very quick questions, and let me ask it real quickly, just in terms of, Amy, what you'd presented. The question, I gather Tabulera doesn't have any considerations around any plans that might be across any states, all 50 of them.
Yeah, correct. No limitations there.
Okay, and then knowing that you are, I call you somewhat system agnostic. Are there any preferred vendors that you've dealt with as opposed to those that you maybe have had, I hate to say it, a little more difficulty, but maybe has to do with the system architecture rather than anything you guys have created?
Yeah, ultimately what we found is the limitations tend to be from the other platforms. And so we are flexible enough that we can mold our products and our onboarding processes to meet the needs of other systems. So I don't want to say that we have a preferred, and I certainly don't want to say that there's one that we don't want to work with, because really the limitations are not on our side.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. As proved, Doug, you're on. Okay, good.
It does, for me. So one thing that we want to talk about and highlight is certainly there are other vendors in the space that do some of the things that Tabulera does. And so we've spent some time polling the market, and we really wanted to show kind of what software vendors can do, because they're certainly adding features to their services as they evolve. Traditional TPAs when it comes to billing and reconciliation, and then of course what Tabulera does. So a couple things that I want to point out is our robotic process automation. So we use this functionality to replace all manual data collections and the entry into our system. So this provides timeliness and accuracy when traditionally this process is full of errors and it takes a ton of time. And I can attest, data entry is probably my least favorite task. So we've been able to automate and process all of these in a streamlined way without having to have anyone touch them. Another thing that we talk about that really sets Tabulera apart are our status dashboards. You'll have access to our system in real time, and it provides 100% transparency into our processes, our transactions, all of the enrollments that have gone through if you do the EDI processes. And again, what we're trying to show is that transparency into what we're doing versus, hey, here is an Excel spreadsheet with all of the transactions that we've done for you on behalf after the fact. So we certainly want to be able to give people that transparency into our processes as we're administering their benefits. And then, no, to your point, yes, we are system technology agnostic, meaning we can connect to any HRIS, payroll, accounting, and carrier systems. So they may have specs and limitations on their end, but we are flexible enough to write the code in order to get the data that we need. And so those are some of the things that set us apart outside of the traditional TPA space.
We're logged into the Tabulera demo environment into Alpha Bioscience, our demo company, as Alice administrator. And the first thing you'll notice here is our summary dashboard, which lays out all the statistical and financial information for Alpha Bioscience's plans. And there's a date over here. The system is highly effective dated. So if we kind of roll back the calendar to January 1st, notice that we'll get different counts, different balances, which I think is a great way just to get a quick snapshot of where the plan is currently to date. And you can notice here across the top, we have employee counts, member counts, prior balances, accounts payable, what the last payment for the last 30 days was. We've got some of that information broken down by carrier as well. And then again, back on the left, we've got statistical information, not only by carrier, but by plan. So you can see the participation levels. And the idea here is that typically where you'd have to go to 2 or 3 or 4 systems, the enrollment platform, your general ledger, your accounts payable platform, the carrier platform, it's all aggregated here in a very straightforward way that allows the plan administrator to know exactly what's happening at a snapshot in time for your benefit plans. So the modules we're going to demo today are really going to be the consolidated billing application, the payments application, as well as integrated reconciliation. So to start with, in order to create a consolidated invoice for our clients each month, we need enrollment information, the census information behind that, who's participating in which plans, and we have a typical file template that our partners or enrollment partners can fill out. That can be sent to us via SFTP each week, or a client can upload that information. But in some fashion, we have that information brought into the platform. And if we're doing EDIs, we know then that we've received a file each week. We know that we've sent the file to the carrier as well, as well as we grab some COBRA data from the COBRA administrator, and this is especially going to help with billing and reconciliation issues. On the payroll side, every month we have a similar process that we go through to obtain all the payroll information. And this is important because both the employer contributions to the plan as well as employee deductions are really balanced down to the penny each month by the platform, and any variances are spotted and identified, and that allows for a very kind of complex ecosystem to make sure that it gets balanced and it gets corrected if there's any corrections that are necessary. So let's go into the billing module for a minute, and let's talk about carrier invoices, because not only do we generate from the enrollment census file information the self bills, but we also go out and get the list bills from all of the carriers that are generating their own bills for clients. I'm just going to kick off a couple of processes here. I'm going to start off with a group Cigna plans and then come down here to UHC. And you'll notice that Our bots are starting to go out and navigate to the vendor sites. We're logging in. We're going to grab the information on behalf of our client. The census information is going to be gathered. That's going to be both for the Cigna plan there that we're showing, as well as here for the United Healthcare plan. So we've got to make sure we can, log in, find the client, pull down different parts of the UHC website in this example, and open the invoice lists and do those types of things to navigate just like a user would through a website. And we maintain all of this for our clients, so you're just having to press a button, or we can press the button, or we can have a button scheduled to be pressed. So again, a number of different ways that this process can kick off, and it just happens once a month. But it's a very painless way in about 60 seconds to go out and collect all the information that's we're either the carrier's generated or that we've pulled in from the census information from your enrollment platform in order to start down the path of creating a consolidated invoice. Part of this, of course, is doesn't really matter to us whether we're pulling down a PDF or we're scraping an HTML page or we happen to be parsing an Excel spreadsheet. We can do all of those, and in fact, many carriers have a number of ways to get information, but the last thing we want anybody to do is have to do it manually, because we're trying to avoid the time and effort in order to do that. So you can see we've got today at 3:31 p.m. we've generated the piece of the invoice that we'll need for the Cigna group plans. I'm just going to pull up an example. This is our spreadsheet that we've generated after as a backup detail for the Cigna group plans here. And so it's by employee, it's by plan, and it's quite exhaustive, as you can see. So we do this for each one of the carriers that's out there. We know, again, how to navigate through their websites, and also we understand how to create from that a consolidated invoice. Let's go over to our employer invoice tab, and I'm going to regenerate this invoice in our demo environment. We have to go through this process a number of times, of course, keep the data fresh, but this will take about 30 seconds here to actually generate the consolidated invoice. And once we do that, I'll bring up the PDF and the Excel spreadsheet, and we'll take a look at the consolidated invoice. Once this invoice is generated, by the way, we have two steps to go through. We can generate it and then publish it. So there's a interim step if somebody wants to QA it, or we want to take a look at it. Makes it very straightforward, and we can run through this process as many times in a month as we really need to, in case we're doing setup or there's an invoice that the carrier we're expecting but the carrier has not generated yet. So let me just pull this invoice up, and here's the consolidated invoice. It starts off with the current month charges and adjustments, and gives you the prior month amount billed and the payments made, and gives you a total at the bottom there. Pretty straightforward. And here's an example of the consolidation where we have the carriers here, MetLife, UHC, and Cigna, and their current month charges, any adjustments that are coming through, as well as then the consolidation of those carriers into a single amount. As you'll see in the payments application, we can then kind of take it for there to complete the entire loop. But this is a 49-page invoice, so there's lots of details by carrier, by plan, by tier of coverage within the plan. And as you get down, you'll also see that we have volumes if it's for life and disability plans. So pretty much everything you would need to recalculate an invoice or audit an invoice that gets you nice and comfortable with how exactly the calculations have occurred. So again, here's the each employee, their volumes, and a rate, so you can get to a premium. Lots of times the carriers don't get into this much detail. You get maybe a summary, a very, very high level summary. So I think this is a far superior process. In addition, then we have an Excel spreadsheet, and I'm just going to bring that up for a minute. And you can see we've got the totals at the top here, which tie. And I'm going to do a real quick pivot table just to show you how simple it is to take a look at the information. And I'm just going to filter by name here. I'm going to put our total premiums down here in values. We're going to put the carrier and the plan information. Oops. Plan information right here. So we've just essentially recreated our invoice. Not quite as pretty as our PDF invoice, but if you need to manipulate the data or take a look at it in depth, if you're familiar at all with this process, it's very straightforward, easy to use, and I'm just going to pull up an employee, our old friend John Wayne. And you can see here that there's a grand total on the invoice of $585.14. We'll just keep that amount in mind as we kind of go through the rest of the demo here. And we're going to publish the invoice now. Okay, and you'll notice that the status has changed to publish. And I'm going to go out and collect payments now. If Tabulera is your third-party administrator, your TPA, we can impound funds, ready to make the payments then and be the common remitter on your behalf. Or if you'd prefer, the funds can stay in your account and we can just generate the ACH files for you to the carriers. So whichever works for you. And let's take a look. I'll just show you the ACH file real quickly. So this is what an ACH file looks like at its core. Not very pretty, but it does get money moved when you have the right permissions at the bank. So I'm just going to close that up. And I'll show you the next tab, which is really to generate payments. So this is our payments module. After we collect, we can certainly then, Tabulera typically goes through and will generate these payments to the carriers. And the interesting thing is these carriers actually all require different payment methods, and also they require different levels of backup information and different file formats. So you can see how quick that was to generate. And if we want to go, let's say, to UHC, UHC's got an interesting kind of remittance file format where we have to list out the summary information, basically down to the person who's on the bill. They need to be able to apply this along with any adjustments for the month that are being paid for, any COBRA employees, for employer or employee paid, any prior month's bills that we're remitting. So a relatively complicated structure, but the great thing is this gets transmitted to UHC or to the other carriers in a secure file format, either directly to their treasury group, and they are able to handle it from there. So it's very straightforward, and it gives us, I think a great process where we're not, having paper checks go back and forth and a lot of time wasted with snail mail. So let's go over to the reconciliation platform and talk about integrated reconciliation for a minute. Our benefit reconciliation application is there to really make sure that as an employer you're collecting the right amounts from your employees, payroll deductions, you're matching the right amount of employer contributions, and that the carriers are billing you the right amount as well. So we've obviously gone out to the carrier websites and captured list bill information. We've generated the self bills. And let's take a look for a minute at our demo employee here, John Wayne. As you'll notice, we have the employee here, John Wayne, top left, the data hire. We know somebody's age. Just some information that makes it much, more convenient to look at their plan level information in detail. And here you can see we've got a column that's enrollment information. And that enrollment information here says that John Wayne had a total of $552.64 from the enrollment platform that we're expecting to see come through on the carrier bill and on payroll. And we've got the carrier bill column here, and sure enough, we get $585.14. And we collected from payroll the $552.64 that was in the enrollment platform. So it looks like enrollment to the payroll platform is working okay. But for some reason, we've either generated from a self bill or the carriers maybe attached the wrong rate on the list bill side, or we've got the wrong rate loaded in the payroll platform. And it's off by $32.50. So as we take a look, we can then see, by plan, the amounts that we're on. So it looks like dental looked fine and our life insurance calculation looked fine. But we get down here to long-term disability, and if you'll notice then the carrier bill that we generated from the self-bill calculation and what was deducted from payroll are two different numbers, and that's why we come up with a variance. Now that could be the calculation that's or amount in the payroll platform maybe didn't get updated on open enrollment, maybe the rates didn't get applied correctly, but there's some variance there that as the administrator you want to check into. And you can see that there's also a variance on short-term disability. So it's happens all the time that different platforms can calculate this stuff differently. We want to make sure we're pointing those variances out so that you can take corrective action. That allows us then to keep a running total as well too. And a couple of ways we can do that. We have something we call a registry view, so we can look here, and we can maybe we'll just look at the month of June, and we'll take a look and kind of go down, and my demo employee, John Wayne, is down here, and you can see that John Wayne had from the carrier expecting $585.14, but if you remember that number, and then a payroll amount of $562.64, so there's a $32.50 variance, the same as we saw just a second ago in the reconciliation detail. And you can see here, the nice thing about this is it's an employee by employee register view, and this is over time. So you can run this over a period of time, and it keeps track then of the cumulative variances that might be occurring in the plan. And this all balances then to, for the month, the variances, or for the time period that you're looking at. So it makes it very straightforward to keep this information by employee and accumulate this information over the course of the plan year. We also have what we call our benefit insight modules, which is essentially a combination of graphs and charts that help kind of with kind of a similar information. And I'm going to apply here. Just take a look at the June period, so you can see that we've got some variances for the month of June. Not big variances, but again, if we look by employee and we apply that filter, you'll see the same $32.50, and it rounds it here to $33 variance for John Wayne, that employee. So that this dashboard kind of gives you a quick summary. If you're in management, or maybe you're a CFO or a controller, you can look at how these variances are accumulating, over a period of time. And it makes it very convenient to be able to look at the, ins and outs of these plans that, give you a much better perspective over what's going on as you're moving through the plan year. And especially if you're on biweekly payroll frequencies where the timing of your payroll compared to the carrier invoices is not exact, you can run this over, different sets of time periods to make sure you're, again, collecting the right amount of premium. And you can see here, here's a view of it since the beginning of the year, and then you can look at a cumulative view. And in our demo database here, we're off. We're collected more in payroll than we have from the carrier invoices. So the beauty of this is, again, being able to look at a number of different views of the same information, but making sure that you understand why these variances might be happening and be able to take corrective actions. And the platform can help you do that as well too as we do the implementation. So we've also got a couple of other dashboards, certainly all the variances by employee, but then we can kind of go down here and look at some statistical information. You just hover over the bar graphs here. You'd see by plan. You can see by carrier as well too if you just click on here and you want to, look at particular information, by carrier, as well as you can actually click on the invoices down there again if you want to bring up an invoice. So that's a brief background on the Tabulera consolidated billing, the payments, and the integrated reconciliation environment. So look forward to having continued conversations with you. Take care.